Hey guys, and welcome back to the ASX Investor channel, and welcome to another CEO interview. Today we'll be unpacking the half-yearly results of Airtasker. ASX ART is Australia's #1 leading marketplace, but they're also got global aspirations. And today we'll be unpacking all of those with Tim Fung, the co-founder and CEO of Airtasker, as well as also talking about the current state of the economic landscape. We know it's been quite an uncertain period that we've all been navigating with, whether at home, in work, or just in general life. And Airtasker have got some interesting insights with that, talking about the labour force and all of those discussions too. So I hope you enjoy this discussion. Tim, welcome back to the channel, mate.
Thanks for having me.
I guess before we dive into the numbers that you've just put out to the market, it'd be good to unpack 2021, big year. You came onto the ASX boards. How do you reflect on it, and how are you currently positioned?
Oh boy, so I think before 2021, it was 9 years of building as a private company. So it was definitely like a really big milestone to jump onto the ASX boards, and it was great to celebrate that with the whole team. It was like a pretty big achievement. It felt like, and a good time to stop and smell the roses. But as soon as you go and do that, you're straight onto the next roller coaster. And so over the last year, we've obviously navigated life as a public company. At the same time, we did a capital raise, and we acquired a US-based company called Zaarly. So it's been pretty non-stop, but glad to have now gone through like that full year of reporting and that cycle, because I think it should get easier from here.
For sure. And then, of course, as part of the obligations, you've got the half-yearly report that's just come out to market. We'd be keen for you to walk us through some of the numbers. Quite interesting as well to see the uptick from the first quarter into the second quarter. We all know, of course, about the lockdowns and everything that came out. So interested to hear your insights on them all.
Yeah, I might actually just start with the impact of lockdowns. So in the first quarter of FY22, we actually measured that there were 188 major city days in lockdown. So you actually take, the number of days that Sydney was in lockdown, Melbourne was in lockdown, add them together, it's about 188 major city days. Thankfully, that came down to 32 major city days in lockdown in the second quarter of FY22. So what you can imagine from that is it's very much 2 quarters that made up the half. So between the first quarter and the second quarter, we saw a growth of about 39% in GMV quarter to quarter. But that's really the measure of the marketplace activity on Airtasker. For the half, we had $83.6 million in GMV. That was up around 15.5% on the prior half. But again, it was really that first quarter lockdowns, the second quarter a sharp rebound. And I'm really pleased to say that in terms of the weekly GMV run rate, which really shows you that rebound, we ended up getting to about $4.5 million in GMV, which was quite a significant acceleration on the previous year's peak. So really good to see that bounce back. And I think it really came down to supporting taskers during those hard times, during the lockdowns. So we put in place a number of measures to actually reduce our fees and maintain the tier status of our taskers during that period. And that was really important because it meant when we rebounded out of the lockdowns and customers started coming back in droves, we actually had a really loyal base of taskers who were like, great, like I'm going to use this platform because they look after me. For that reason, the take rate went down in the second quarter. And so revenue was up around 10.4%. So not as much as GMV, but that's normalized now. And we expect it to go back to where it was pre the lockdowns.
Fantastic to hear. And then I guess flowing through into that second half as well, you've uplifted the forecasted guidance for that well over the $100 million at GMV now. Can you give us some insights about what you're hoping to work towards and what are those key growth drivers on the horizon?
Yeah, first of all, as you mentioned, our original guidance was 105 mil for the second half. We've upped that to 107 to 110. That's, of course, really predicated on the assumption that there aren't any further lockdowns in the second half. And look, we're very optimistic that there won't be further lockdowns. I think COVID's here to stay. We're all sort of aware of that now, but no further government restrictions. But that is an assumption that we've made there. So how are we going to deliver on this? I think 3 main streams that we're focused on. I'll touch on product and marketing first and maybe leave international to later. In product, really excited about some of the initiatives that we're bringing to market. So listings continues to see really great growth. So this is like the reverse Airtasker, where you can now come on and say, here's what I can do for this amount of money, and have that be listed on the Airtasker marketplace. Bookings have grown to about 3,500 bookings per week. So that's continued to see continued growth. And what we're really excited about that is going into some of these really new categories, which don't really suit the original Airtasker open marketplace model. The second thing that I think is really interesting is the introduction of what we call contacts. So contacts basically says, after you have worked with someone on Airtasker, you get to store that person into your contacts. And then you can go back and work with them at any time you want for a very, very low fee, where we help you transact the payments, provide insurance, and provide a simple mechanism for payments and management. So that's really exciting for us, because that's really like how we move from being just the first transaction to being this place where you can manage your relationships through Airtasker. So really, really excited about contacts. We, of course, continue to invest into our original Airtasker product. I think one of the interesting things there is what we call verticalization. So that's really about when people start typing into the open form, into the search bar on Airtasker, we're predicting what service you're looking for. And then we're customizing the experience to make it easier for you to get through that flow. If I then jump across to marketing, so marketing, we brought on a new chief marketing officer, Noel, halfway through last year. We spent this last 6 months really investing into strategy and creative production. And we're now about to launch our new creative campaign called The Joy of Done. So that's going out all across Australia and also the UK as well. And we're going to be investing around about 25-75 in terms of a split in marketing between the first half and the second half. So expect a lot more in the second half, I guess, compared to the first half.
There is plenty going on that front. And then I guess there is that third dimension as well, which you touched on before with the geographical expansion. Keen to hear how everything's playing out on the US and the UK front as well.
Sure. So, I think what's really been interesting about Airtasker in Australia is that in FY21, so last year, we got Airtasker to operating cash flow positive. And we're really, really proud of that. We feel like as a business, it's really important to demonstrate that you can generate cash flows and not be reliant on like raising money all the time. Now that we've been able to prove that, we're going back and investing into replicating that success in the US and the UK. And roughly each of those markets is in a different stage of development. So over in the US, we're in the 0 to 1 phase. That's the very first phase. And over there, we're investing into generating posted tasks in our 4 key cities. What we're also seeing as we grow each of those cities is we're seeing this nice trickle over effect where other cities are just sort of emerging out of nowhere, and people are just discovering Airtasker and going, oh, I'm going to post a task in another city outside of our 4 key cities. So that's really, really exciting to see. We saw that happen in Australia. So it's definitely been an expectation, but something that's great to see happen over in the US. In the UK, we're in that second phase of building out a marketplace. So after 0 to 1 in the US, we call it 1 to 100. So we're generating $4 to $5 million in GMV, gross marketplace volume, in the UK. We're doing that by balancing both the supply and the demand in the marketplace. So not just posted tasks, but also making sure we've got an engaged base of supply over there. We saw GMV increase by about 121% year on year. So that's really positive to see. And all of this is in the pursuit of replicating the success we've had in Australia, which is really to be able to build cities to, Sydney and Melbourne do more than $50 million of GMV a year. So that's sort of like almost like the factory line of cities, starting from what we're doing in the US through to what we're doing in the UK and building it towards what we've done in Australia. But it's almost, the opposite way around, where we started in a smaller country and now we're moving out into the bigger one. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it sounds like there's so much going on across all of those fronts. Of course, as we did touch on earlier, we're in a globally uncertain period. There's a lot going on for the labor force and the broader macroeconomic picture. I know Airtasker have got their wage price index. You've got a lot of visibility and insights that you can accrue across all of the different taskers and the jobs that are being done. We'd be keen to hear your thoughts on what you've been seeing in the wage price index and what that could mean moving forward for the broader landscape too.
Well, yeah, I'm really excited to be launching the AWPI, the Airtasker Wage Price Index, because we've got a really unique data set at Airtasker. More than 200,000 posted tasks a month, $4.5 million transactions a week going through the platform. And I think never before has all of this sort of been consolidated in one place. Most of the ABS statistics are based on surveys and things like that, whereas this is real transactional data in each of the categories. We are seeing, first of all, that overall wage growth is going up, and that is really, really great for Australians. More money going into their hip pocket. I think that is all great news. And I think customers buying services want to make sure that other Aussies are getting paid well for the work that they do. So that's a really fantastic outcome. If we look at some of the specific things, so I think hospitality was one of the indexes that we released. And it's really telling. You can see there that during lockdowns, the prices come down, wages come down, which makes sense, right? As pubs and restaurants have to close down, of course, that flows through into a supply-demand mechanic that means that wages come down. But what's really great is in the hospitality sector, those wages bounce right back up following lockdowns. And we saw in the Dec 21 quarter, a huge bounce back to almost 150 points for the AWPI in that sector. Second is trades. I think it's probably no surprise that people know that tradespeople are doing very, very well at the moment. There has been a constraint on that market, and people are spending lots of time at home, looking at the crack in the wall, going like, geez, I got to get that repaired. So no surprise that, following the initial lockdowns, the price of tradies has gone up a lot. And then I guess the third area, which I think is index, which was quite interesting, was the home services index. So this is things like cleaners and gardeners and, moving homes and things like this. And you can see there that was starting to come down a little bit. But over the past year and a half, it started to bounce back really strong and actually grown to almost 150 points. Now, I think this makes sense because not only do you have people spending more time at home, looking at the grass growing, wanting to have their home cleaned and looked after, wanting to invest into their property more, makes a lot of sense. But it's also compounded by the fact that you've got less people coming into the country. So a lot of these jobs, I think, are handled by international students or by people, net migration into the country. And what we've seen over the past year and a half is 600,000 temporary visa holders leaving the country. So that was a big, outflow of people, and about half the number of international students in Australia. So when you combine that together, there's no surprises that wages are going up. And I think that this, as mentioned, it's a really great thing to see wages going in the right direction, but also something that we want to manage there because we want to make sure that things stay affordable as well.
We keen to hear your thoughts as well. Of course, we know, across the technology sector, there has been some difficulties and some headwinds for many of the share prices that have come under pressure with the macroeconomic landscape. Airtasker has not been immune to that. Just keen to hear any reflections that you do have on that as a CEO.
Yeah, so I think that first of all, I think that responding to the short-term movements in the markets is, as a CEO, is not usually a wise thing to do, because sometimes things go up, sometimes things go down. They've got nothing to do with the fundamentals of the business that you're building. So we've just got our heads down and really focused on building out our product roadmap, our marketing roadmap, and our international growth plans, and just executing on that without looking at the share price too often. That said, in terms of describing what's going on there, I think that, as I've spoken to various investors and fund managers and things like that, the sentiment is that most people are sort of acting first and then asking questions later. And so you are seeing some sort of these whipsaws happening where, something's going to happen in Russia and the Ukraine. Okay, better sell everything and then, we'll buy it back later if we need to. I think that's created some massive movements. I think also, particularly in some of the technology spaces, they're often new segments and new industries that people don't really know too much about. And so when that happens, people tend to take a pretty superficial view of oh, it's tech. Okay, that's bad, better sell. I think there's quite a lot of nuance between, a SaaS accounting company versus a consumer marketplace for local services versus someone who's in logistics tech. So There's probably not a whole bunch of nuance on that, probably a pretty simplistic view. And again, that contributes to that ups and downs that happen. But again, long run, you just got to focus on what you're doing.
I've heard that message from you before in our previous interviews as well, that you focus on that long-term sustainable development. So it's great to hear that be reaffirmed. I guess that brings us to the outlook for 2022. What are you most excited on? What do you think investors should really look out for? And how are you positioned for it all?
Well, I think that, I've spoken a little bit about our product and our marketing roadmap, as well as international growth. And it's been really fantastic to be able to build a team that can really take Airtasker to the next level. So in 2021, we had our first ever CMO, our first ever Chief Product Officer, and our first ever Chief HR Officer. So I think really watching them and our whole team prosper into 2022 is going to be exciting. I think that's probably going to come with a bunch of like market turbulence. And I think this is going to certainly keep it exciting. Some might call it stressful, others would call it exciting, but I think there's going to be lots of opportunity that happens, whether that's consolidation, acquisitions, a whole bunch of different things are going to happen. But, as life rolls on, it's generally always for the better. I think that 2022, I'm really optimistic.
That is the Airtasker story. It's ASX ART. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button. Feel free to share it out. We make daily videos, so make sure you've subscribed and turn your bell notifications on. Tim Fung, mate, it's always a pleasure to catch up. Love talking about the Airtasker story, and best of luck for the year up ahead.
Thanks so much.